A very good morning to all of you, and what an energetic way to start the morning with a panel on renewable energy. I thank all the guests who have come here. The last 2 decades saw India warming up to the idea of mega-scale renewable energy. A country where the power systems were designed around coal, this meant reimagining, redesigning the whole system. In thermal power, the public sector was in the driving seat, building cities wherever they built plants. But it was the private sector which took the lead in renewable energy ecosystem, building plants in some of the remotest corners of the country. So if you pass through the pristine Western Ghats, you will find bright white windmills. The deserts are now seen blue thanks to the solar panels, and even rooftops, one being the Business Standard Office in Delhi. And in the recent years, this focus has shifted from pay to China to make in India. New energy sources are getting added to the list, the manufacturing ecosystem is being bolstered, and now green electricity costs less than coal. But what lies beyond, what lacunas remain, and what should India's energy transition look like for the next 2 decades as the new world order takes shape, we'll find out from the builders here. I would like to start with you, Mr. Singh. How would you describe the renewable energy ecosystem in the country, the whole landscape, as the largest player who is operating in almost every state where each offers a different set of challenge?
Sure, I call it opportunities. And no, thank you again for having me this morning. It's exciting to be part of this. Look, I think renewable energy, or I think in a very important way, is now going to be rising and growing with accelerated pace. This is the era of renewable electricity. The electricity will have, or electrical energy will have a supreme contribution towards underpinning the demands of energy supply, and I think everything will get electrified eventually. So if you look at what's happening in the renewable sector today, the demand is growing quite rapidly. I mean, the GDP growth is there, and you know, we are still far behind from where we would like to be. So there is a need for working on ultra-scale, mega-scale projects, and which is why we undertook the challenge of putting together the 30 gigawatt plant in Khavda, which is absolutely you know, well on its way. In fact, only just today we concluded a small milestone in the journey of our company. We have just crossed 12 gigawatt scale as total portfolio level, and continue to grow to 50 gigawatt by end of the decade in 2030. If you look at the solar resources and the wind resources in our country, it's quite amazing to see how much we have in Gujarat and Rajasthan, and also in different parts of the country. And there is a lot of wind as well. There's a lot of wind manufacturing, which I know is happening in the country, which is allowing us to also deploy these projects on a rapid scale. So 2 things we feel has to become more, and they are going to be the critical success factors for this. One is localization of supply chain. If we want to move fast, we need to have the supply chain localized. So we are investing quite a lot, and I know a lot of the sector is making an effort to localize, whether it is solar modules, wind turbines, and all the auxiliary equipment. The second thing is talent. You know, while we are growing, I think we also need a big pool of talented people to come into the sector, to participate in the sector and contribute to its growth. So those 2 things, I think, together will be the success factors for the sector, and I think we are very optimistic it will happen.
Thank you. That's a lot of thoughts, and we'll come back to on that, especially skilling. I'll come to you, Mr. Nanda. Tata Power was dabbling in renewable energy long before any central state policies. The company was distributing solar lamps in villages, but now you set up one of the country's largest solar manufacturing. So in these many years, how has the company kept in tandem, you know, with the growth and with the demands of the energy ecosystem in the country?
Thank you very much, Shreya. I think one thing that I always look at is that what is the government's policy towards the sector? And if your company's policy is aligned with the government's policy, then that's the right sector to be in. The Indian government has embarked on this plan of 500 gigawatts. If you look back, you know, from the lens of 2014, that seemed to be a very ambitious task. Initially we said 300, and then we bumped it up to 500. But today in this room, if you ask people, that are you confident we'll hit 500? The answer is yes, we will hit that 500. Our estimates is that we'll hit 500 by 2030. We will probably hit around 650 by 2032. What we've done in Tata Power, like many of the large industry players, is that we have embarked on this massive journey to add capacity on the ground. We have 6,000 megawatts operational. We are building another 6,000. And as Amit mentioned rightly, is that this has been done at the back of manufacturing, again supported by the Indian government. So again, full marks in terms of the PLI scheme, for example. We were a beneficiary of that, and we commissioned this plant. It's a world-class plant at a massive scale. And the good news for all of us here as Indians is that the efficiency that we're getting from these plants, you know, us and others as well, is at the efficiency at which you probably get it in China. And there isn't a day that's far off that we will probably take the next leap in terms of defining what should be the industry standards in terms of safety, quality, benchmarks. Now, the other segments which are growing is the active CNI segment. So the industries have also embarked on this journey of embracing green. And as you rightly said in your opening comments, today going green is as much about the green attributes as it is about cost. In this industry, I think the cost of electricity is the critical aspect, and today with the advent of complex tenders which have come up and the combination of wind power with solar and battery storage, and in the near future with pumped hydro, I think we can replace the thermal electron 1:1 at a cost which is significantly lower. Having said that, there are challenges in the sector which we'll discuss at the appropriate time.
Absolutely. Mr. Tanti, you co-founded Suzlon some 3 decades now with your brother, the windman, late Mr. Tulsi Tanti. And at that time, renewable energy was hardly talked about. Wind sector and Suzlon both have been through series of resets. So what is the status now? Is the sector looking at another reset, or is it a status quo or something exciting?
Yeah. Thank you. I think, you know, we've seen various stages of growth for the wind sector in our country in the last 3 decades. We had that early advantage of starting the journey, and which has led to a situation that, you know, unlike in solar, where we are still, I think as an average industry, still at about 20% local content on an average for last year, what we achieved. Of course, it will speed up as we go along. But in wind, the average local content for the entire industry is already about 64%. And Suzlon has been running in excess of 75% for past decade plus. So I think what has happened because of this early start is that today we have close to about 2,500 sub-suppliers and ecosystems which have developed in the country. A lot of global players have installed their plants also over here. And due to this, today the total manufacturing capacity of our country today is about 18 gigawatts already, which is 3 to 4x of what the country needs in terms of the yearly requirement today. So there is a huge potential, and the current forecast is this is an industry where, being in clean tech, it is meeting several of our aspirations of our Prime Minister. First, you are in clean tech sector. Second, you are self-reliant. We do not need any technology support from anybody in the world. We've been doing it for 2 decades now. And not only that, the third one is that we are able to supply globally. So of the 21 gigawatts that Suzlon has installed today worldwide, almost 5 gigawatts plus is installed in about 17 countries across the globe, right from US to Australia to Africa to European countries, even in China. So from that point of view, this is one clean tech where we are self-reliant. Make in India has been a strong footprint for us. And being a supply hub for the world, I mean, the latest forecast is that by 2030, 10% of global wind energy equipment supply will come from India. So this is where we are at a little advanced stage amongst the various clean tech that we have.
Right. Thank you for that. I want Amit you to address the dragon in the room. There is a constant struggle between the demands of the domestic solar equipment manufacturers and the power generators. One would want imports to be completely stopped. There should be higher duties. Another wants much more relaxation. As a leading power generator, do you think that measures like import restrictions and higher duties are counter-effective to the whole problem, or because that would lead to reducing of prices and scaling up faster? What are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think we need to think long term and not short term ways of moving forward. I think if we keep an eye on the long term success of our country, of our nation, I think we need to remember that localization is going to be needed. So we cannot be selfish. Nobody can be selfish. I think we need to make sure that at the inception stage, embryonic stage of the manufacturing sector, they need to be supported. There need to be some barriers put in place so that they can grow and become to a scale so that they can be economically as competitive as the rest of the world, or I think one particular northern country we are talking about. So I think, frankly, I think these things will fall off, I'm sure, at the right time. But I think in the early stages, some of these things help the flourish local supply chain, and I don't see particularly anything wrong with that. Having said that, I think you still see that. I don't think that is the reason why renewable is not moving forward. That I don't think is the top of the pyramid reason. If you look at the acceleration, if you look at the growth, and also the LCOE of electricity in India, or renewable electricity, is still the lowest in spite of all those factors. So I think we should be proud of that. We have managed to bring the cost down to such an extent that it is going to fuel other sectors, because this is going to have a multiplier effect on other industries which require a lot of power, and they will be fueled by green power. The likes of cement sector, likes of all the data centers which will be needed for AI, which will benefit from low cost of green power. So I think overall, I think it's a healthy mix, and I think the government is doing a great job managing it.
But has the focus tilted towards domestic content more, or is it still a 60-40 or a situation? Not to put a number to it, but what is your observation?
Yeah, I think still I would say that if you look at solar sector, the biggest capex is obviously the solar module. Within the solar module, I think India still has, from a value addition point of view, we have a lot of supply of module manufacturing, 60 plus gigawatt plus. When you look at cell and you go down in supply chain and you look at ingot, wafer, and polysilicon refining, we obviously have very limited or no supply chain there. So the value addition in the country has to grow. So I think, it's hard to put a percent, but I think we are far behind from where we should be. As a company, as a group, we have invested in the supply chain backwardly, and we have put cell manufacturing, we have put ingot wafer extraction systems as well, and we're expanding on it. We believe that a local supply chain is going to be needed, not just for India, but for the rest of the world, and we are investing in that direction as well.
Right.
And just, Shreya, just to add to this point, I think it's a very interesting debate, but what's important for building a nation, Make in India is more important than anything else. Because, today we are blessed that our country is among the fastest growing economy in the world, yeah? And with the young people that we have a beautiful next 3 decades of growth that we are going to see, and it's a very robust kind of growth that we are going to see. It will be a pity if we don't use this opportunity to really build talent, employ these young people, get them jobs, and start making in India and be the supplier to the world. And I think it's very important. So while we are doing the megawatts, it's very important. The local content of that megawatt is very important. Even if it is going to be slightly expensive in the short term, on the long term basis, it has to be Make in India, because that is the only way you are going to create jobs in the country. That's the only way the economy, real trickling down of the benefits is going to go to the grassroots. So I think and above all today, wind, solar, storage, whatever together we can make around the clock power today, it is still cheaper than any other source we can make. Another thing we must not forget that for most of the conventional energy sources, we are dependent on imports of fuel. Now the world is becoming pretty complex place with bipolar and multipolar situation that we have now. So there are security risks which the country can face. It's important that we leverage and stay on course to achieving Prime Minister's vision. There is a very thoughtful reason of going to that 50% of green energy by 2030 and achieving net zero by 2070. We are on course, I think industry is on course, and we are for the first time having that kind of visibility in our country. And that is allowing large scale project development and also allowing for investments in technology development. And I think we will see in clean tech, India will become the global supplier to the world, and world is looking for a global supplier. What next beyond China? And we have that golden opportunity, and so many SMEs and MSMEs. That is our strength of our country. It's very important that we build that in a bigger way. So, that's the other thing.
Yeah. While I have you, wind sector compared to solar has been indigenous from the very beginning, but it was dependent on SOPs or tax benefits for quite some time, and when they expired, the market took a tumble. But now the sector is coming onto its own without any support system. So do you think that the wind sector specifically is now driven purely by market forces?
Yeah, so I think if we see for the past almost, you can say 2 decades, there has been zero incentive for wind. So 20 साल हो गया है, कोई incentive नहीं है. So I think the industry has been running without any incentive, and also the early day incentives, let's remember it was a different country then, 20 years back. As a OEM, I have not received a single incentive. So the benefits were to the end users, not to the manufacturer. So the wind industry which is built in India is purely built around innovation. But the good thing was that we had the time. See, right now in solar we are at a stage where we don't have that time, and therefore that support is required. Same way I think what is required now, if we have to move ahead, because there is this other important element which is critical in the RTC design, because that's the only way we can have firm energy and replacement of our energy needs. It is very important that wind and solar ko saath mein leke chale hum. That's very critical. And in doing that, there is also a need that some sort of support is required in wind to make sure that the MSMEs and SMEs and we develop, we become the global supplier. So I think any kind of new incentives that are being given, and see when today solar is already 2x of wind. So any new incentive of any kind being given should be shared between wind, solar, storage technology, EVs, all of them. So we need to take the entire clean tech basket and make sure that we incentivize rightfully in each one of them. Each one has a different journey of localization as well as being a global supplier. So wherever, whatever is required, we need to make sure we are working on all those legs.
Right. Mr. Nanda, you're riding both waves. So give us your perspective. What are the measures that would help both the manufacturers and the power generators or project developers?
I think on the manufacturing decision in the right direction, for all the points that were mentioned here, it augurs very well for security. And the next path is to complete the entire value chain. So in the case of solar, we have now come up with domestic modules with domestic cells. Literally zero import of any Chinese modules. I think whatever imports are happening are for the residual projects which were done before 2021. And the next step is to have domestic cells. And the encouraging news is that manufacturing capacity is being added in a very systematic, calibrated fashion. MNRE does a fantastic job. We expect that same time next year we should have 25 gigawatt of capacity on cell. India adds anywhere between 18 to 20 gigawatts annually of solar. So I think in terms of availability of domestic capacity for modules assembled locally and cells assembled locally, we should be in a position to take care of the country's needs. There is a trade-off in terms of the tariff that you'll have to pay, but that's the price that you pay to develop your industry and to come to a point where you stand at par with international companies and then overtake them. Now, two other aspects are that you go down this value chain and you do the polysilicon and you do the ingot and the wafer. We strongly expect that that's the next wave of policy intervention that the Indian government will make, and that will then make sure that we have the entire value chain with us. There are other aspects that we should start looking at very seriously is the manufacturing sector that provides technology for the processes that we have today. Because today, all said and done, while we do manufacture and assemble modules in the case of solar, but a lot of the machinery is still coming from the overseas. And India can become a manufacturing hub, to what Girish mentioned, if we aspire, and we should, to become an export hub for all things, clean tech and RE, the manufacturing element needs to happen here. And I'm sure that the industry is working very closely with the government on that. That's one. The other is on R&D, because the technology obsolescence here is so high that we need to really make investments in R&D, and that's something that the industry has always fallen short of. So conversations like these should encourage industry to go back and say that, look, I'm going to make tangible investments in R&D and come up with the next breakthrough where we break the glass ceiling of 25, 26% efficiency, and how are we taking a lead on R&D? I guess once you do this, if you have R&D in control, it's a matter of focus and attention. It's not a matter of capital. Capital is available with most enterprises here if they decide to do so. Manufacturing of local equipments here, full value chain, then I think we'll have a very, very composite and a very cogent story to go after.
Right. How much role do you think PLI has played in it? That is one part of my question. Second is, I'll just take the thread from you, what you were mentioning. And sorry, what Mr. Tanti said, that there has to be an ecosystem. Like wind has close to 2,000 sub-suppliers. Do you think PLI itself needs to reimagine, the PLI scheme needs to be reimagined so that this whole manufacturing ecosystem for solar sector is created?
So, to your first point, PLI has played a significant role, I would say. PLI has come in different forms. We were the beneficiaries of PLI 2, and we have kind of taken the benefit of the entire PLI. So for a plant that we have invested, so we invested close to 4,600 crores to build a 4.3 gigawatt plant for both cells and modules. The PLI that we get from the state and the center put together and all other benefits is in the range of 2,000 crores, and NPV of that is almost 30-31%. Now, which country gives you this kind of a PLI benefit? There are again two parts to the PLI. One is you have a scheme available. The other is the adherence of the scheme by the industry. Now, that one will need a lot of focus and attention and a rigor to make sure that you have taken the full benefit of the PLI scheme. Now, the next question in terms of ancillary development of manufacturing, most players are looking at it. And the Indian government, again, systematically, like what happened with glass, for example, there is now an incentive for you to manufacture because there are trade barriers and non-trade barriers. So I think this particular ecosystem will develop and evolve. And the pressing need always that will drive behavior in the industry is the cost of electricity. The Indian tendering process on how tenders are awarded, large-scale tenders are awarded. Now, India tenders anywhere between 50 to 60 gigawatt every year. We finalize 35 to 40 gigawatts every year. Is one on competitive bidding, where earlier you had a system where you had two envelopes, you open the envelope, whoever is the lowest gets the bid. But today you open the envelope, good for you, we'll put it up on the internet. And then we'll have a clock ticking, and then you'll have to fight a race till the finish, right? There's no secrets left. Yeah. That system will always ensure that there is enough incentive for you to keep localizing and look at every element of your value chain. I think elements of lean manufacturing will come into this sector. We'll become more focused. It's a thin margin sector, for example, for that matter. But I think in terms of localization, the role that the government is playing, the PLI schemes that will happen, I think are well positioned. Having said that, the non-PLI business ventures are also taking off. So it's not that everybody is only waiting for the PLI to come in for them to come up with a business case. There is a significant non-PLI sector from the manufacturer's point of view that has already taken off in the country.
Thank you. And so many exciting things happening at the manufacturing front. Mr. Singh, what's your estimate? By when will you have 100% Desi solar power plant? And will it be price competitive?
I'm not going to put a date to it, but I think it will be price competitive for sure. I think, on pricing, I think, I just want to build on what was said earlier. I think we should look at pricing not just as the cost, but also how we operate the plant. And when we talk about how we operate the plant, I think I just want to talk a little bit about wind. And wind plants typically have, they have this, the wind patterns in our country change quite seasonally, and they can have a lot of extremes. So while it is one thing to manufacturing a plant, but how do you make sure that you put a right size wind plant so you can actually bring the electricity and also deliver whatever marginal profit we just talked about is a different challenge. And one thing which I want to bring to the attention is that to deliver that, the understanding of weather patterns, the understanding of wind speeds at a micro level is extremely important, and I think that is something which we need to address as well. It is something which we all need to work together because that needs to be understood for the entire geography of the country, and use that to forecast and do a resource assessment. And I think when you combine low cost of manufacturing and fit for purpose design of a plant, it will definitely give a low cost of energy supply, which is what we need. And same thing applies to solar as well, where I think the combination of now solar plus battery can help reduce the cost of transmission lines in the future, because for all the existing places where the transmission lines have been built but not used in the evening, we need to look at how we can augment battery there, and that will help move electrons quicker. So when you look at the total system, I think we need to look at holistically how to reduce the total system cost, and those two things is definitely something which I would talk about.
Mr. Tati, would you
Just
want
to add to what Amit has just referred to, I think 2-3 things there. First is just to give you a feel of the amount of effort that has gone over the last 3 decades on the pure R&D side of things, because that is crucial for successful long-term success of building industries. When we started in the first decade, the wind potential of India, what it was, versus today, the wind potential has increased by 3x. So we were talking about 300 gigawatts then as the total country's wind potential. Now we are talking 1 terawatt. Hawa nahi badh gayi hai. Okay, it's technology. So there is huge amount of R&D that is being done. We run almost 6 global centers. A large part of it is done in India. And there is immense work, as Amit is saying, that wind is a complex science, and you need to develop that expertise, and fortunately now we have that expertise. And today, having that ability to build technologies which you can go and put up. Today, Suzlon has kind of installed projects in the extreme cold weathers also. So we have installed at minus 36 degrees, okay, जहाँ blade पे पूरा बर्फ जम जाता है. And then we have installed at 50 degrees in Rajasthan also, where things could just burn out with that kind of heat. So it's a complex national geography that you can work with. So a lot of effort has to go in R&D, and I think that's where solar will have to also kind of focus ultimately. That's where the long-term sustainable. Once we have the capacities, the focus has to move there. The second important element is around really understanding the complexities of wind as a science. And I think today I can tell you that some of our first turbines, which were installed completing 30 years, at that time the turbine life used to be 20 years. With the service care that has been taken and the upgradations which are done, those turbines are still running today after 30 years. And the average, if we were to take that when they made the investment, what was their expectation of returns over the life of the project versus what return they have made there, whatever prediction we had given is equal or better. So I don't think anybody would have lost money in wind, so that we do not confuse the argument. But that's where it is. But it's complex. And the other more important piece that is there now, which is very crucial for our growth from here on, is that when we are looking to make firm energy, RTC power जब बनाना है, उसमें it's a very important piece that, see, all said and done, today the solar power which we produce is produced during the day. And it does not meet your peak requirements. Our peaks are in the early mornings and late evenings. So when the huge demand of electricity is required by consumers, solar cannot support that. We are already generating more than what we need at that time. That is the reason now we are talking of storage. कि भाई storage लगा के उसको either morning में ले जाओ या evening में ले जाओ. So whereas in wind you get it throughout the day, it addresses the peak. So while you would see that in solar, cost per kilowatt hour from a capex point of view is a bit lower than wind, but when you look from a consumer point of view, then wind is cheaper than solar because it is available at times when they need it at a price point which is cheaper than what they would get solar. Because the moment you use battery, then the cost goes significantly higher than wind. So I think a right combination of wind, solar, and then for balance portion only, battery should be used to make a firm energy. Typically a good project with the wind conditions we have in our country, a combination of 60-40 of wind and solar. Sometimes even wind can be more, 60, and solar can be 40. Sometimes it will be. That kind of combination if we go and then have 10 to 15% of battery, this combination will, in the today's economic environment, whatever the performance of products we have, whatever the cost structures we have, and the policy regulations which we have, this is the broadly the good fit for India. But all put together, I think we can still produce power at cheaper than any conventional energy source today.
But another complexity that the wind market faces is lack of players. You know, in recent years, there has been a significant reduction. Most of the foreign players are not there. Can you speak on the behalf of the company and also of the sector? Can you meet the demand that is coming up?
So I think it's an important factor which you touch based on this. So I think what's there is that we have seen largely because what has happened is that depending on your policy regulations, you will see players coming into your country and establishing and all that, yeah. What has happened is because of at different point in time, different policy structures would attract different global investors to come to our country. However, if I tell from a point of, so today also, we have enough players in our country and the total manufacturing capacity is already 3 times what India needs. So it's not true that there are no players. There are enough players available in the market and products are all available. A large portion of them are using India as the base for manufacturing and exporting. But because India price point has gone to such a low level, not everybody can compete in India. So it's important that we maintain the cost of energy to the right level and there is enough competition and I don't think we have an issue on that. So choice is available to people, but you know, it's kind of, you have to kind of pick up from what you need in terms of your local content requirement. And now we have global players also here who are having equal good share. I mean, all said and done, it's only 30% of the market which Suzlon serves today. So 66% somebody is serving, yeah? So we should not assume that we are the only one. I don't think that's the situation. But yeah, I mean, we are lucky to be the preferred source for most of the players.
Yeah, thanks. The ultimate goal is 500 gigawatt and we are what, like 5 years away from it. And that would mean scaling up across the supply chain. Mr. Nanda, while you were setting up your manufacturing unit in Tamil Nadu, what are the challenges and lessons that you picked up on the way?
It's actually been a pretty smooth journey, I would say. So if you measure time we signed the MOU to time we cut the ribbon and started manufacturing, it was probably 2 years, right? And this is a function of the industrial hubs that have come up in different parts of India. And the fact that today, you know, every other month you have an investor summit. Recently we saw what happened in Assam, Madhya Pradesh and so on. The Indian state has become extremely careful and interested in attracting investments. And hence those hurdles are not there anymore actually, Shreya. It is now becoming easier and easier for us. And the decision-making points are 5, 6 different states, right? What is the vantage point advantage that you have in terms of location? But more importantly, what is it that the state is willing to offer? And there is this healthy competitiveness between the states to attract investment. And then I would again go back to the earlier point. Then it is up to the industrialist and the industries to make the most of it. And if an MOU is signed, which is what I tell my team, that we will sign MOUs which we will convert into real projects on the ground. The other point that you mentioned is that on the 500 gigawatt, and I want to mention this here so that we have some conversation around it. All of this is not just grid scale power. We'll be missing an opportunity if we don't discuss on the distributed power, distributed RE. There is a revolution happening in rooftop solar. And the revolution is again driven by a fantastic, I would use the word game-changing policy of the Indian government, where the Indian government has come up with a plan where many of us, if not all, are aware that there is a massive incentive given directly to the consumer on day one if you install a rooftop panel in your homes. Now, I'm tempted to ask the audience, how many of you have installed rooftop? But if you have not installed, here is the math as to why you should install, and you should also spread the word. For a family of 4, the typical load that you would consume is 5 kilowatt. Now, 5 kilowatt attracts an investment of around 2.5 lakhs. So 2.5 lakh rupees to install a rooftop solar panel in your house. The Indian government gives you a 78,000 rupee discount directly through a direct transfer scheme based on your Aadhaar card. You get it directly in your bank account. So now you're in the range of 160, 170. That 1.7 lakhs, there are many states who have said that we will contribute even further. Uttar Pradesh has said 45,000, we will provide extra benefit. Orissa has now said 60,000 rupees. So your entire system cost comes down to 1 lakh of rupees for 5 kilowatt. You have a PPA that is preset with the state. It's all net metered. Within 7 days, you have it installed in your house. The entire process of getting a smart meter, getting the documents signed with the state DISCOM, such that when you don't consume the power, you sell the power back to the grid. Your bill comes crashing down, and you might end up just paying 100, 200, 300 rupees of what could have been a 3,000 rupee bill. Now this benefit is for 25 years. The Indian government's policies are also to make sure that the inverter is guaranteed by the OEM for 8 years. The panel is guaranteed for 25 years. Now just imagine, that strata of consumers that consume 5 kilowatts or less, and that's the majority actually in terms of numbers, now have a solution where they have the control on the pricing power of electricity, and we have seen some very interesting stats. The growth of air conditioners because of rooftop. There is a very clear correlation. We are now doing a study to see what is the growth of EV cars. Because today if I have electricity at home, I know my parents used to chide me when I say that, you have not switched off the light, right? We don't have so much money at home. Why are you being so careless? On the other hand, the same psyche works that, hey, by the way, I have my own solar power, right? And I'm not paying for it because I'm now generating power. And there is a one-time benefit. These are, today the market there is 5 gigawatts every year. And this is going to really boom with this aspiration of powering at least 10 million homes. I think that's one story that really we need to broadcast through your platforms and make sure that the distributed renewable energy sector, which touches human lives, takes off in a significant way.
That's a fantastic point, and as you said, it's a very interesting scheme because solar by its nature should be where the demand is. But this would involve a significant level of awareness campaigning among the consumers, etc. Do companies such as yours want to take that mantle? And also if you can address what kind of business opportunities it presents, because obviously there's a gap in terms of interest, demand and actual installation.
So what I did, a few seconds back was again the same thing, to create awareness. I think the onus is on our shoulders to create the awareness that there is this fantastic scheme. The government is doing its best, but all of us need to come together. It'll take a village for us to spread the word. The opportunity in terms of jobs. So this is typically done through a distributor model. You have, channel partners across the country. They then hire retailers. There is a big skilling effort which is going on here. Again, through Tata Power, we have 20 centers where we offer training which can last for, say, 2 weeks, for example. Basic training in terms of how do you go about installing, right? All electrical training. And there are 4 parameters that we are extremely passionate about, and the sequence is very important for us. First is safety. you're handling roofs and hence working from heights. We go to a large extent to make sure that safety, training is imparted. Now, the Indian youth, to the point that Girish was making earlier, the Indian youth is getting skilled employment and is getting trained through these centers. And again, a lot of this is also funded by the Indian government. Second, in terms of quality. So, in our case, for example, I'm sure that I also speak on behalf of the industry. All the equipment goes in a box, everything is by the OEM, everything is tested, and hence there is a high degree of quality that goes down to the consumer, because that experience in terms of I've installed it, the moment you install it at your home, the next thing you want is I want to go and see the meter, whether I am producing my own power. That entire experience in terms of having the lightning arrestor, all the pipes, the wires, the panels, that aspect of quality is big for us. Third one is delivery. The moment you've made an application online at the Indian government's portal, right, the enthusiasm starts that I'm going to get a solar panel. Now, it's a large country, and we have 1.4 billion people. There are aspirations here. And as the word takes off and people start looking at it, the industry needs to come together to make sure that our commitments on delivery from the time an application is made, and again I would compliment the government that they are also extremely aware as to how are the systems working, right? Is the direct benefit transfer scheme working effectively or not? They are also going and doing inspections to check whether those many units which have been guaranteed are being generated or not. And the last one is cost. So this one has to be at a cost where maybe the industry should also decide that, look, for this particular scheme, make sure that this is at the lowest cost of electricity for the people of India. So that entire approach in terms of having safety and then having quality and then having delivery, 70% of our time, honestly, is to make sure that the logistics is in place, the last mile is in place, and then there's a lot of training that's happening in the background. When I use the word lot, we are still just scratching the surface. The real big boom in terms of this awareness campaign, once it takes off, you will see that it will start impacting. I'm sure everybody is really thinking here that, do I have a rooftop? And then you may have questions that, hey, by the way, I live in an apartment building, I don't have a roof. Don't worry, there are solutions even for those, which we can discuss offline.
Thank you for that. I'll take the issue of consumer awareness to grid scale with you, Amit. You have been in the oil sector for roughly 2 decades, and commencing a project there has its own set of challenges. How is it different in renewable energy in terms of land and local support? And I have to mention your recent heartwarming ad campaign. Is it easy to convince people, pehle pankha aega, fir bijli aayegi?
Look, I think, in oil and gas sector, I think one thing we, and I personally was involved in a lot, was in America's unconventional fracking. I think, I don't know if there's anybody from oil and gas here in the room, but, there are a lot of parallels between what a fracking operation looks like and what a solar installation setup looks like. And I think what we are doing in Khavda is a hallmark of that. We have put together a factory model where we have invested in a large-scale infrastructure development, and we have set up a working hospital with several beds, in collaboration with Apollo. We have some of the best doctors available in Khavda, which is, just for people who have not visited, is 2 hours away from Bhuj. When we went there, there was not a single person there. There were quite a few snakes and scorpions, but nobody was living there. And now we have a thriving community of 14,000 plus people who are working and living and absolutely making a change, driving a change. And this is going to become a world record in few years' time, where you will see more than 30 gigawatt of renewable electricity coming from our group. But also remember, there is other companies, so total of 45 plus gigawatt will come from that area. And this is something which we are immensely proud of. And I think these large-scale projects have to take off in different parts of the country, because we are a big country, we are a big nation, we need big moves like that. And I think we need to have those kind of efforts being put in place in other places. Talking about how we can duplicate this, I think, just want to build on what we just talked about is, building more awareness, building more, community around it. I think the talent pool has to be developed. one thing as we grow, we still suffer from a lot of not having adequate resources or skilled resources available to us to grow. So I think I would strongly encourage, young students, young professionals to maybe enter this business, enter this market, understand the nuances of wind business, understand the nuances of a good electrical engineer or a good systems engineer who can perform the duties. And I think there's a huge opportunity waiting out there to be part of this sector.
You've touched upon a very important issue of skill development. What is the situation right now? Because we keep hearing from the industry that there is a significant gap between a skilled workforce for the factory floor and also skilled managerial executives that you need for important roles. What is the situation, and how as a company you are dealing with this? And I want each of you also to come in on that, please.
Sure. Look, I think at the moment, I think what we have done is we have done two things. One is we invite people to work with us, even if they don't have much of an experience in renewable. And we have set up basic training facilities for safety first. I think we make sure that we impart proper safety training, especially electrical safety, working at height, and just personal safety, working in an operational project site like where we operate. And second, we look at giving them some training around what electrical systems they're going to operate on, what civil equipment they're going to operate on. And we do this both on site, but in parallel, we're also developing a skill center in Mundra, which will be essentially open to all. I think the vision of our chairman, Gautam Bhai, is to kind of develop a group of professionals who would not only just work with our group, but they are free to go work in the industry. And that is coming up, which will essentially be a flagship training center, and where we will be making sure that we take thousands of people and take them through the system and give them some of the best exposure to technology, to manufacturing sciences, to running equipments. And that is the breed of people we need who can make a difference, because the quality of workmanship is equally important. Otherwise, we will not have the plant running for 25 years like we just talked about. So that is something we are focusing on a lot.
I'll be quick. So we did something which is very beautiful. Our manufacturing plant that I've talked about in Tamil Nadu is in Tirunelveli. There is this town called Gangai Kundan. So what we did is that we said, look, it's a 329-acre plot where we have two plants. We have a cell plant and a module plant. And we said that we have an opportunity here to do something extremely different, right? And we said that we will hire 80% of our workforce to be women within a radius of 50 to 100 kilometers. Now today at that site, and I would love many of you to come and visit the site, we have 2,500 employees, 80% of them women. They went through a training program through the Tata Power Training Institute. And today that plant is operated, by people from the vicinity. And this is something that all of us are extremely, extremely proud of. It tells you 2-3 things. One, it tells you that you have an opportunity to go beyond immediate business needs, right? Take a pause and plan through as to what can you contribute to society at that point in time. Also through our CSR budgets that we have, we are looking at water in a big way in that particular locality. That part of the country has temple ponds, for example. These are depleted and they don't look like a temple pond anymore. So we said that let's go back and revive like how the traditional temple ponds used to be. That's a great opportunity for us. I'm sure that many of these aspects have happened in different parts, but I thought that I'll share this, to your question on what are we doing in terms of training and coming up with skill. On the challenges part, to my earlier point in terms of manufacturing of equipment, so one, we talked about manufacturing of module, but the equipment that manufactures the module is still imported. And there is a constraint in getting the OEM staff in India, and this again industry-wide. There's always this constant kind of to and fro in terms of getting that talent in the country to make sure that your plants are running at the efficiencies at which they have planned. And this is something that we as an industry need to address.
Yeah, I think, we had even tougher journey when we started 30 years back, because getting anybody to even understand renewable at that time was. So what has happened over the years is that at multiple levels, different kind of skill development and talent development we've done. I think now we have facilities, total manufacturing facilities, I think we have 14, 2 new opening up, so about 16 facilities spread over 7 states. All our facilities have, talent development centers there. And our focus has been recruiting locally. So we work very closely with even tier 2, tier 3 universities and schools and at the field to make sure that we take local talents from those areas so that there is local development at a grassroots. So that's one section which we work. Then for the wind farm sites, we now have with the 16 gigawatts of operating wind turbines, close to about 125 large wind park sites that are there across 8 states. And so all these 100 plus locations again have talent development centers, again with the same concept of working with local colleges and schools to kind of do that grassroots development of talent. And then we have our global talent development center in Pune, which not only just caters for India but worldwide on the training and talent development. And lastly, what we have started in the recent past is collaborating now on a big scale with the state governments. So we have just signed a few months back an agreement with AP government to set up a large co-creation of talent centers, and now we are replicating that in other states on that. So I think developing that, we have huge amount of talent and young population available. It's just giving them the right mentoring to be able to get to the finish line for getting employed into, and there is tremendous interest of young people on getting into the clean tech sector. I think it's just providing the conduit to make it happen. And a large portion, we also see that almost for first 1 year of the time that they join us, it's still development, So I think they really get into delivery post 1 year. So that's also a journey from that. But huge potential, and I think it's a continuous process, and that's very important for skill development that we have to work.
Sure.
One more thing I want to add, we also want more female participation in clean tech sector. That is something which, we're actively working on, and I would strongly encourage through your platform to send a message. I think renewable sector is something where, for example, we have made a small effort. In Khavda, for example, we've hired 30 plus females to operate the world's biggest plant. So it will be operated by all females. We want to send a message. We want to invite and make them part of this sector as well, more and more. We need more talented people, and we shouldn't be shying away from in attracting talents from all sides. So.
I think this is very valid. I think diversity, whether it's women participation and also specially abled talent, I think for the past, I think 1 decade, we have a very strong focus program running. Even just as last year, I think this current financial year will be closing to almost doubling our diversity metrics that we have in our organization. And it's not just at a grassroots. So even at middle management and senior management, there is a conscious effort that in this growth phase, and also creating those model factories and sites where you have women-led entire development. Close to 70% is coming from women, be it a factory, be it a project site and things like that. So the transformation work, we need to replicate more and more. So I think it's a great industry, and we would really love more women participation in the industry.
So ladies, this is your cue to send your CVs here. On this note, I want to touch upon the issue of states, very important stakeholders, but offer novel challenges. Ms. Nana, states continue to be reluctant to sign power purchase agreement. The lack of demand is real. But then they are open to green businesses, as you were talking about the state investor summit happening now and then. Can you explain this 180-degree behavior?
So I think things are improving ever since this was highlighted that, look, there is a delta between the letter of intent and the letter of awards which have been placed by different aggregators versus the PPAs signed. The cost is not the issue, I would say. I think the grid could be an issue. Imposing the renewable obligations and making sure that states live up to that particular commitment that has been made, that is one way to solve this. But in my recent discussions and our own projects that we have bid for, I think this will be an issue of the past, maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, where the delta will collapse. Government is extremely aware of this, and they are now prioritizing that what LOIs have been signed. The other is that what are the natural infrastructure bottlenecks that we have? And the big elephant in the room when it comes to this is the availability of land. Now, the developer is left to fend for himself or herself to spot land parcels to build projects. It is very difficult for a developer to get direct land allocation from the state. And I speak more for the medium scale developer. Large companies, do get awards at times, but even that is very, very difficult. I think one way to solve this is that government as an aggregator of land for solar and wind projects, like how government as an aggregator of supply, which is then distributed, but government as an aggregator of land for solar and wind projects. Once that is done, the timeliness of completion of projects is much more in your control. I would add to that once you have land available aggregated by the government, transmission also aggregated by the government, there's maybe an 18-month cycle before even a RFP can be issued. But it's okay to take a pause for some time and to make sure that you put these two things in place and then start the journey. I think the cost of electricity will come down even further.
I was coming to you, if buyers are missing, what are the avenues then left for you?
No, look, I think the one thing which we need to recognize is that the firm power and RTC power has to come in. The reasons the buyers are possibly not buying is because the cost of buying that incremental electron is very heavy. Because we are only looking at economics from generator's point of view, but if you look at from buyer's point of view, they need to pay for transmission charges, they need to, and these are very expensive HVDC lines in some cases. So I think we need to be cognizant of that, and I think more and more RTC solutions have to come into picture going forward. And I think I agree. I think if there is a way to distribute power and do projects in other states, that will be great. But do we have those land parcels available? For example, in the fertile lands in North India, are we going to change a farm land into a solar land? Jury's out there. I think it's better to use, in my opinion, land where we don't have any farm and fertile use cases like Rajasthan and Gujarat and other parts of India. And take advantage of these, RTC solutions which are available to us. So I think once we have those, we feel more confident that the buyers will definitely take up. But I think for the current PPAs which have not been signed up, I know that I think the government is very actively, and ministry is very actively pursuing it, and we are very hopeful that it will be resolved and we will have some of those things taken care of. But in spite of that, we are working to install and develop those projects, and that is not slowing us down.
Great.
And I think this is
sure.
generally, I think it's an area of concern at this point in time that we have huge amount of PPAs yet to be kind of signed off. But I think it's just a system glitch which will kind of solve itself. And ultimately, as Amit said, it's going to be the end consumer pricing which is going to decide everything. And market will have to adjust to that new reality. And the moment we are going for a firm energy, you try to sell just solar electricity or wind electricity, it's going to be a challenge. But the moment it is RTC projects, there is a firm power and there is clarity on the end cost to the states, then I think that will smoothen out. So I think it's something that, and there is a good cooperation, and this is a very important project which I think state governments and central governments are already focused in this space. I'm sure solutions will come out, and in the next 6 months we should be on our way again to kind of having that clarity of new way of doing business. But I think purely on a consumer price since it is competitive. Rest is all regulated related cost. So as long as you can today produce commercially viable electrons at source to deliver to the consumer, then government has to sort out their other costs and manage who is going to keep what money. Yeah, and I think that's what's just happening right now. And I think once that gets sorted out, because the true benefit of clean tech is actually going to come when, because today we say that, okay, we can produce at a cheaper rate on an RTC price also, it is still cheaper than coal or other sources, but that price benefit is not going to end consumer. Yeah, only in certain cases it's going. So when we really democratize that, and that benefit, true benefits of getting power at your home or at your factory at below 5 rupees and do it yourself, when we have that freedom, because today technology can make it happen. Yeah, that solution is already there and people are using it. So the more that adoption will come, I think that will be the real influx point, and that will make India globally competitive. Because if today you are running a factory at 7-8 rupees power, you're not going to be globally competitive.
Thank you for this, and I'll ask my last question. It is addressed to all three of you. 3 focus areas, it can be 4, which you think can spur this country towards becoming the renewable energy hub. Mr. Tanti, you can start, please.
Okay, I think first and foremost, we need a much more stronger, and I think I'm happy to see in the budget that we have the National Manufacturing Mission being announced and National Export Mission also being announced. I think these are 2 very fundamental points, and getting those activities correct to be able to produce in India and supply to the world. I think if we can make that happen, it will bring long-term sustainable jobs, opportunity, technology development, and being self-reliant in the entire value chain, including IP. We have to learn to make our own technology. Today, India has enough capability to make its own technology. We don't need outside technology. We have enough expert minds, it's there. So I think believing in us is very important as Indians, that we can do it, and focusing on Make in India as a strong area. As far as the hitting the 500 gigawatts target, I think 2 major bottlenecks, or 3 I would say. One we just talked about, getting the tariff matters resolved between center and state and getting a smooth working system there. The more important another area is on really having the grid capacity in time. Because today with wind and solar, we can put up projects in 12 to 18 months. But grid is taking 24 to 36 months. So they are running behind. And unless they don't catch up with that, the infrastructure is not there, then we cannot build the projects. And I think the third element which is there would be on skills development, really. I think developing our talent and really growing that talent will be very important. So 3 pillars.
I'll be quick and I'll add incrementally. So I'd say first is policy. Continue to be at the cutting edge of policy, be extremely contemporary. In today's world, I think India has a unique opportunity to be the leader in clean tech, right? Don't look at what's happening in the West. Second, I would say infrastructure. Solve infrastructure bottlenecks. Those are massive in the country. We have done great so far. We have touched 200 gigawatts. But the climb from 200 to 500 to 600 and so on, I think infrastructure bottlenecks will have to be addressed. And third, I would say financing, right? Continue to offer financing both for the distributed RE sector as well as for large-scale project development, be it through schemes like PLI, be it through demand creation. I think the entire bucket of the finance made available to encourage manufacturing and growth, these are the 3 things that I would focus on.
Thank you. Mr. Singh.
Yeah, I think, I might have to repeat some of the things said, but I just want to maybe bring a different flavor to it. I think the first and foremost is that, the sector is going through a period where we will be bottlenecked by availability of transmission systems. And the reason is because there is a demand for HVDC lines and and maybe more players to come in. And I think that is something which needs to be addressed very, very quickly. And I think that is something has to be dealt with a sense of urgency, and I think that is going to unlock new investments and growth in the renewable sector. Otherwise, I think I worry that a lot of these projects which we are talking about may get delayed because if the transmission systems are not ready, the investments will not come through. And second one is financing. I think the cost of finance has to come down in some cases. Both for large projects, but also some of the small players, if I can speak on their behalf, they need to be supported, and both from manufacturing and development point of view. I think, a lot of people I know are looking to set up these projects, and they don't get supported from the financial institutions as well. So financing has to be looked at again, and I think the depth has to go. Some of the domestic bond market has to be also grow, because a lot of these projects, once they are completed, they are very stable and secure, and they need to be somehow, the bond market in India has to also be, the depth has to go up. And thirdly is skills. We need a vast pool of people. I mean, this sector requires a lot of people. And we don't have those number of people, and especially skilled people. So electrical engineers out there, it's your time to shine. And I think the material science and chemical industry should also get ready. I think a lot of these technology improvements we're talking about will require understanding of material science and chemical as well. So a lot of opportunities for young professionals to participate and make a mark. So yeah, those are my 3 things I would add. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this great conversation. The last 2 decades were of construction. The next 2 are of transformation. Thank you again, everyone. Can you just stay back for the mementos and photographs?
Thank you so much. Such a vast spectrum that we've covered over here, opportunities, expectations from the government, also the confidence that the sector has that the day is not far when India's renewable energy sector will be defining industry standards in quality and safety.